Well, I don't think this is a proper word to call Chinese legal system non-transparent. I think actually the Chinese system is actually mature. It is actually well established over so many years, and it has its own, systems which actually goes, in every, aspect. So I think actually this Australian Mr. Gillespie's case has been handled in the due process of the Chinese legal system, and actually the verdict has recently been made.
It would be different, you're right, it is, but it is not as transparent as Western systems. Is his sentence comparable to other cases?
I think actually his case is comparable in that actually about 7.5 kilograms of ice, the possession and also trafficking of this amount of the drug is actually punishable in accordance with Chinese law, and anyone, no matter the person is Australian or Canadian or Chinese or from any place of the world, will receive the due punishment. And 7.5 kilogram is really a big number, so that actually I think death penalty is actually what he receives.
Now, in death penalty cases, it's fairly normal for countries to make representation to the other nation if a country opposes the death penalty, as Australia clearly does. Do you think that's fair and reasonable to do that through the right channels?
I think actually Australia obviously is actually not in line with the process of death penalty, while China actually is actually in Chinese law, death penalty is one of their punishments. So that actually I think actually we cannot impose one country's system upon another, because actually simply because one country is actually exerting its rightful rights to give their verdicts. But obviously Australia opposes death penalty, but Australia obviously cannot impose its own legal system upon the Chinese system.
But in the same way as China made representation for Meng Wanzhou in Canada, the Huawei case, it was okay for Beijing to make representations or intervene in that case. Why is it not the same for Australia to advocate for its nationals?
I don't think actually in Meng Wanzhou's case China is intervening. I think actually China is making its stand to be known to the world, to the Canadian side, but I don't think actually China is actually intervening or simply interfering with any country's legal system, including
No, but it's
Canadians.
making representation, isn't it?
The legal representation, for Ms. Meng Wanzhou is simply made by herself and also her company, not by the Chinese government.
Let's move to China's targeting of several industries, Australian industries. If that targeting and that sort of sanctions against some of those industries is not related to the WHO inquiry into COVID-19, how do you see this relationship being repaired?
I think there is no causal relations between, the Australia's, proposal of doing the so-called, independent inquiry, and also the recent trade issues between the two countries. There's no causal relationship between the two. But obviously, when the bilateral relations is deteriorating, when actually the Chinese, consumers, Chinese business people are actually losing confidence in the business environment in Australia, I think that's definitely will be affecting their future initiatives and also acts to invest and also to consume in Australia.
So why is China losing confidence? We've been such solid business partners for years. Why are they losing confidence?
I think this is a very good comment. We have been such solid partners previously, but in recent several years, Australian governments and also media outlets have been making constant, continuous attack about China, of China, trying to poison, the bilateral relations as a way that actually, I think actually that's what is currently, definitely affecting the sentiments of the, the general people, the general public in Australia. For example, there are some racist attacks, targeting at Chinese or Asian or other Asian, peoples, persons, that definitely is actually, causing people in China, and including students, including tourists, to be losing their confidence in Australia.
I'll come back to that issue of racism, but you did say that there was this constant attacking from Australia against China. So it suggests to me that you do see a causal link between what you perceive to be attacks and the effect that it's had on trade.
I don't think actually that is a proper, correlation between, the A and B. What I mean is that simply, because the Australian side, including the government officials and also the media outlets, have been, trying to create a very negative image of China. So that is actually causing the cause and also effect. The effect is simply, about sentiments in the Australian among the Australian general public about their reactions towards China, their sentiments about China, so that actually they may not be demonstrating, displaying a very positive, welcoming attitude towards China, and that is actually wreaking havoc upon the previously solid partnership.
Do you think China, that is very powerful these days, should not be more robust and be able to take criticism more effectively from partners in an adult and sort of diplomatic way, that you can work through these kind of issues in a robust way when you have good, strong relations?
When I think any country is taking, unjustifiable and wrong, attack, I don't think actually any due response is childish. I think any adults, responsible, governments, and also the media, and also any, including academics like myself, actually will actually make due responses towards those attacks. That is actually reaction. That is natural reaction that anybody will be demonstrating. This is not childish. This is mature. This is actually a natural response.
Let's talk about the racist issues that you've raised. China itself had issues with racism towards African people in China during the COVID pandemic, where African people living in China were treated very poorly. Do you not think countries do experience these kind of issues from time to time, and they need to address them?
I read the reports, run by the Australian newspaper about the so-called racist situation, in Guangzhou towards the Africans. I think that is a very distorted picture about what had been happening over there. There were some, scrutiny about people, being exposed to COVID infection, and that is not actually targeting at a particular ethnic group. That is targeting at everyone, including Chinese nationals, including people coming from another province into Guangzhou, coming from another country, from Vietnam, from Australia.
So you're agreeing that there are people being targeted, though, and that sometimes does happen?
Anybody. It's not specified towards anyone. It's anybody is actually subject to these very rigid process of scrutiny, inspection, and also quarantine.
Has China warned Chinese students and tourists against travelling to the US?
I think actually it is very obvious, because at the current situation, the United States is not opening to any overseas students. So naturally, China does not need necessary to issue any warning.
And we haven't either yet, though, have we? We haven't either yet, have we?
Australia is opening its school new semester in July. So definitely, Australia is actually, and many, schools and universities in Australia are actually trying to, get their students from overseas, especially from China, to come back to Australia. I think actually that is a very imminent situation that is happening. That is why I think the Chinese government departments, is actually issuing.
Yeah, so do you expect them to issue the same warning against the US, considering the way Donald Trump has spoken about it as a China virus?
I think actually when the due situation, the due scenario is happening, the Chinese department will make the relevant responses to any situation regarding the situation at the time. And also mind you that actually in Australia it is the winter season, because usually the winter season is actually a season rife with severe flu situations. So that is also complicating the situation. So I think actually this is, according to the Chinese Education Department, this is not the right time for Chinese students to traveling, overseas and also to Australia at this moment.
Chinese students have always looked very favourably on the Australian academic system. Do you think they're going to listen to this warning?
I think actually the Chinese students, academics, including me myself, are very much in love with the Australian education system. We think Australian education system is first rate in the world. So definitely, we hope actually the bilateral relations will actually get better, so that actually there will be a favorable situation in which there's no racist attacks, no unfavorable situations happening, so that actually Chinese students can come back to Australia.
Let's hope we can fall in love again, the two of us, the two countries at least. Thank you, Professor, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.